It's time to awaken and remember who you really are. It's time to live a life that you absolutely love. And it is time for the awakened being. Conversations to create change. Having real, transparent conversations that will change your world. And together, we can change the world. Hello, you divine light beings. I'm so excited. Today on the Awaken Being Conversations to Create Change, I felt really called to talk about how I created breast cancer, as well as getting cheated on, and how I was able to heal that. These were some of the greatest transformational moments of my life where I got direct downloads and teachings to completely shift my experience, which I get to share with you here. So please enjoy. Super excited to share that with you. And if you haven't yet, go to marcilock.com to get the free Have It All activation and meditation tool. That way you can utilize that every day to support you. Also check out if there's any other coachings or meditations or activations or anything that will serve and support you, upcoming events. And my biggest recommendation is to join the Best Life Tribe. That's where you get so much access to everything and all the extra trainings and the Q&As and all the things that I do. So we are here to support in any way that you are experiencing resistance in your life. There is a solution for you to move forward and create being able to receive. Sending you so much love and enjoy the show. I have had something keep coming up in my field to go back to and share, and it's actually the story and the experience I had of creating breast cancer and a cheating husband. And for those of you that have followed my journey know that I cured myself of breast cancer, and I'm in complete divine absolute peace and adoration and partnership with my former as partners in raising our divine, lovely growth partners and my babes, my two boys. And so, but this experience was one of the greatest experiences and game changers for me in understanding the micro alignment and the underlying frequencies of what we are creating versus what we want to be creating and what we think we're creating. It's also one of the moments where I began to receive the direct downloads of the 5 steps, which is the main tool that I have in all my programs, as well as teach even $1 million clients. It's a tool for any time you don't feel awesome. You use the 5 steps, and it's retraining your pathways, your programming, your beliefs, your patterns, and your behaviors to come into alignment with a higher vibrational frequency and what you want. So to consciously be responding versus unconsciously. If you guys are interested in that, definitely check out the Freedom audios on my site where it goes deep into that. Yet this was actually probably, I'd say, the solution or the healing guidance I got to completely heal myself of breast cancer, was to be able to use this to find what parts of me still got to be healed and loved as to why breast cancer was created. And so I want to share a few things. I want to share with you that powerful moment. And my oldest was not even 2 years old. And my youngest obviously hadn't been born yet. And at the time I was married to the only man I've ever been married to, my former. And I had gone in for a check for, and I don't even remember how this evolved, for me going in for a check. I think, actually I had found a lump in my breast and it was there for a while. And so ended up going in to get checked, and it got confirmed that I had breast cancer. Now, the moment after finding this out, I remember I went to call my mom, and the only 2 people that knew that I was having this appointment was my husband at the time, and my mom. And the moment that I got a hold of my mom and I said, "Mom, I've got breast cancer," I instantly felt my entire system feel sick. My entire body went, "Oh, you're sick." And I remember what happened was I went into some ulterior universe of time, and literally everything stopped, and I saw what I was creating by, in that moment, choosing to declare that I had this and that I was sick. So it's like time stopped, and I saw the words of "I have breast cancer" go out to the universe. I saw my whole body respond to that vibration and become sick. And I started to see how it would completely create my experience. And so I saw myself go to pick up the phone, and it was like my sister who had called me, and my sister was like, "How you doing, hun?" And the vibration was, "'Cause I'm sick." And I saw just this creation of me being sick and dealing with the sickness of breast cancer because I had declared and said that I was sick. And I saw literally me go to a space of dying from breast cancer. And it just all in terror and shock was like, what do I really want? This is where the 5 steps downloaded is like what I was noticing and what I was experiencing. I was like, well, what do I really want? And I was like, I want to live. And for, if anything, I, at the time, not having the depth of love for myself that I understand and live in now, it was like, I want to live. I've got my little boy. I want to live for my little boy. And I saw how I could choose to either choose to be sick and choose to experience breast cancer and choose to die, or I could choose to create health and live. And yet what came up was I noticed how I wanted to share the story, the victimhood, the image, whatever you would call it, of having this issue. And as I was in this reality looking at this, it was like, whoa, like I knew that if I chose to speak into it and let people know and live in that, I would be creating it. And yet, so the other choice would be to completely choose something different, to choose health, to choose strength, to choose to focus on that and to not buy into this identity. And it was like my scared little self that had only known struggle and suffering my entire life. I'd only known the identity of being the victim who survived. My entire life had been the victim who survived, from having rape and kidnapping attempts to obviously tons of sicknesses and diseases to just being raised poor and in the environment I did. And it was like there was always one hardship after another. All we knew how to do was to survive. I was trained in survival. And so it was like my identity had come from surviving through these things. And even at a later date, I remember my brother actually saying to me when something really traumatic happened, he said, "Mars, if anybody can overcome this, you can, because you're the strongest person I know." And I remember that time and that moment thinking, fuck that. I'm tired of being the strongest person everyone knows. I'm tired of fighting struggle. And these were the realizations for me of realizing that, like, I no longer wanted to be that warrior who was in the battle and in the fight. And I no longer wanted to continually have one issue after another, feeling like a victim that was just bitch slapped around by life. And so this was an awareness for me that I saw how much I wanted to hold on to that identity because it was all I knew. And it was the only way I felt like I was enough. It was the only way I felt validated. That if I had struggle and suffering and sacrifice happening, it was like, oh, poor her, or, oh, well, you're dealing with this. And it was like, I'll prove and I'll show I can overcome. And it was like the victim who became the hero. But then I had to just be the victim again and the victim again and the victim again. And it was fascinating to me to see how it was like, oh, but I so badly wanted to be able to share, if I was going through this, to share with others. And I realized it's just because that's all I knew and that was my identity. And so then I got to see that for me to choose something different, it was like, what do you really want? Call yourself on your own bullshit. What do you really want? And I was like, I want to live. I want to live. I want to experience health. I'm so tired of the struggle life. I want to see the roses and I want to enjoy the play and I want to create a different life experience. And this was a strong, powerful moment of me calling myself forth to changing the behaviors and the patterns and the beliefs to create something different. And so what I saw was that if I truly wanted that, I had to let go of all the old patterns and behaviors and beliefs and identity and ways of being that were not going to create the life that I wanted to live. They were only going to create what I knew and what I'd been programmed in. And remember, guys, it's not who you are. It's just what you've learned. It's just what you've learned. And so in that moment, all of a sudden it's like I came back to reality and my mom was like, probably saying my name, trying to get attention. I just literally I went somewhere and I had this whole vision and imprinting and understanding of the opportunity, my choice in that moment. And in that moment, I said to my mom, I said, Mom, this is what I'm realizing and I'm noticing is that whatever I focus on is what I'm going to create as my experience. And I choose to focus on health and create health and to be completely healthy. And so I noticed also that my mom had been the space for me of speaking victimhood. Over the years, it was, if you hear more of my story, it was like so many years that I didn't even sleep. From the time I was little, I was really attacked in my crib by dark spirits. I had a lot of alien encounters. I also had a lot of dimensional things tapping in and happening that were keeping me from feeling safe to go to sleep. And then from a young age, it was just like I couldn't shut down to sleep. At an older age, I had stalkers and the rape attempts and kidnappers and all these scary things I constantly attracted. And so I didn't know how to go to sleep. I had no idea how to turn off and go to sleep because I was really terrified to go to sleep. And I also thought that if I went to sleep, then I'd be attacked, and had experiences that validated that. And so as I was older and I had my son and was married, I remember, my mom would call and be like, "How you doing? How'd you sleep?" And I'd say, "Oh, I didn't." And I would tell her how exhausted I was and the struggle I was experiencing. And our whole relationship was built around talking about what we didn't want, which I didn't understand at the time was only creating that consistently being my reality. How could I ever create health or any of this healing if I was only focused on and speaking into the story and reclaiming and declaring my own self-fulfilling prophecy of the shit that I was experiencing, and because I was creating that. And so this was part of me seeing this, and that vision was that I was called forth to, I got to be in micro alignment. And, micro alignment really came into my understanding as I grew in my conscious journey, but I really see it as what I was being taught already then was that it didn't mean you couldn't go and tell everyone you had this and be operating from that identity and then expect that you could create health. It was like you can't serve two masters. The energy never lies. Whatever energy you're going to choose is going to create that as a result. And so I said to my mom, what I'm noticing is this, this is what I'm learning and I'm noticing. And what I want is I want health, and I want to live a long, healthy life, and I am choosing health. And so from this moment on, if we're going to have a relationship, then we can only talk about health and how I'm healthy and whole. We can talk about funny stories. We can laugh, we can play, and there's no space in this time, in this opportunity for anything other than focusing on that. That's what I'm choosing. And I said, now, if that's an issue, then, what we can do is we can just put a pause on our connection and our relationship connecting time. And as I focus on my health and my healing, basically my mom was just in shock. It's a completely different person and change here in just this brief moments over the phone. And she'd never experienced me like this. She'd only experienced me talking the victimhood. And so she said yes, because I actually said that I swore also to secrecy. I said, no one else can know about this. This is only you, only my former got to know, and I'm moving forward creating health and no one else gets to know. Because I saw that if I told my brothers, my sister, anyone else, that it would be that experience. It would be that how you doing and focused on sickness versus focused on health. So I swore my mom to secrecy if we were going to continue our relationship, and she agreed to that. Well, it was a year later that I went in and got checked, and I was completely, I decided that I wasn't going to go the route of Western medicine. I decided my choice. I was going to just focus on these aspects that I'd been learning, but I had not been called to totally imprint with. I'd been doing very much surface self-empowerment for years. And this was one of the beginning things, as you hear in my story, obviously, creating a cheating husband as well and getting divorced was the big turnkey for me of going to the depths of inner alignment and going to deeper understanding of consciousness than the surface stuff that I had learned and stayed in and struggle, because it was very much scratching the surface and not filling in the gaps and all things coming into alignment. It was very much like a saying one thing and feeling something different. They're two polar opposites and there's no clear energy alignment. And so you're going to get what you're vibrating. So I also feel called to look beyond the moment and see where this actually started and why it actually showed up. Parts of this, as I knew as I started down that road to heal myself, I was starting to receive a lot of information and start to study certain things. And I knew that everything was connected to emotions. And so I knew the first step to healing was getting clear on why I had created the breast cancer. And so I dived into the emotional connections to the breasts. And breast cancer was associated with a refusal to nourish the self or to receive the mothering and the nourishment. And this made so much sense because my entire program all growing up was wearing a mask, pretending to be basically anything you wanted me to be. It was perfectionist identity. I wanted to be perfect and I'd do whatever you wanted me to do and be so that you'd like me. And it's a pretty common program that we have in our society is this perfectionist identity and perfectionist tendencies. And so along with that, it was putting myself last. It was the entire program I was raised in was you come last, you put everyone else first. And so it made complete sense as I dove into this, that this was the program I'd been raised in, and still in many, many ways was what I was still operating out of. There's so many layers that I got to peel back and see how I continued to put myself last or didn't speak up to what I fully, truly wanted or operate from my own sovereign self and would bypass or do things to make other people happy. And so it was a beautiful opportunity to take radical responsibility for the fact that I had created this illness. Living my entire life in trauma and drama and struggle, my body didn't work because from the time I was little, I took on a belief system that said the body doesn't work. The body is a struggle. My dad had diabetes my entire life. In fact, they were surprised that my parents always said that they didn't plan on me because they had no idea that they thought they could even have more kids. And so my dad was sick my entire life and really probably lived longer because my mom's passion for trying to find healthy solutions, as poor as we were, did everything she could nutritionally to try to support my dad. And my dad passed when I was 15 years old, but I was raised literally with this view of the body is sick, the body doesn't work, it's a total guessing game, it's pure luck. We had countless family members that were always sick and had several diseases. And so from the time I was young, started experiencing death. I probably had at least 10 deaths by the time I was a teenager, and then experienced a lot of deaths with even friends. And so it was just like, life was just fucking hard and a struggle. And the body was something that you always fought. From the time I was little, I saw my dad fighting his body in the sickness and other relatives and things. And then I did from a very young age. I created sicknesses and diseases from, I had, what are they called? The ulcers, and I had migraines, and I had so many crazy sicknesses that we didn't even know what was happening. Some near-death experiences from sicknesses. And so I could see how I believed that the body was sick. And because I'd been suppressing my emotions and had this identity that said as a victim, like I was a victim who survived, and that was my only knowing of life, and scraping by as this perfectionist, afraid of failure, yet continually sabotaging myself and my success, I created all of this in my body. And the other thing that I remembered experiencing and remembered coming to me as I got diagnosed with this was I remember being a little girl and somehow seeing a TV program, like a news show or something, where some lady was on talking about breast cancer. And what she was saying was that, like, I don't know the stats, but it was staggering. It's like, 4 out of 5 people get cancer. It's like almost everyone can have this issue. And so the message was, you're going to have a problem with your breasts. You could have cancer. You need to watch for this. And so I remember from a young age, I didn't remember this until the diagnosis. And then I remembered that program and seeing that and deciding and being worried that I could have a problem with my breasts. And from the time I was little, I remember always, I was like, that's why I do that. Like, I didn't even recognize that that's why I do that, where I would check my boobs and like feel my boobs and mess with my boobs, and like almost on a daily basis at some point, almost every time I was naked or if I was in the bathroom. And it was just like, and I had no idea, I didn't remember that that's where that came from. So again, from a young age, I was already looking for this to exist. Now, talk about, this is the importance of what we choose to look for. Now, my son, I remember at one point when he had mentioned, he said, he had this mark on his body, and he said, yeah, Dad said that it could be cancer and I should watch it. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's the same type of programming as when we go this could be sickness. And it's like doctors and the media all just constantly saying these things about symptoms and what's wrong. That's what we're looking for. And so I got to share with my little boy how it's like, okay, yeah, that's understandable that you could have that thought. And I said, how do you feel in your body when you say that thought? When you say this could be cancer, how do you feel? And he said, scared and worried and stressed and afraid and all these things. And I was like, yeah. So that's actually what your body is feeling. And you're, we explained like programming and talking to your body and your cells to respond. And if they think that something's wrong, they're going to be looking for something to be wrong, and they're going to create that exact thing to be wrong. And so what do we want to create is, if we want to create that you're healthy, what could we tell our body? What would we focus on? And these are like the basic steps that I teach, and obviously some of our consciousness and conscious communication and think and speak to create the world that you're living in. It's like one of my very first coachings I ever created, as I really understood the depth of this, that whatever you are speaking into is what you're creating. Now, that also means you can be speaking the high vibrational affirmations, but your body doesn't believe it. And this is why the surface self-empowerment, there gets to be an alignment to having what you speak into be also what you can believe. And that's why I teach on align to manifest, because so many people create their visions and like their goals at the beginning of the year and their visions of what they want, but then less than 3% of people actually achieve their goals and their vision. Why? Because they're not aligned to that new vision. They're aligned to their past shit. And so this is how I was aligned to my past shit. And I was aligned to sickness and disease and struggling and victimhood. And so for me to shift to align to something different, I had to take radical responsibility. And this reminds me of how, as I share also, that our perfect, beautiful, amazing story of our contract with each other, and that my boys were, I think my oldest was 4, almost 4 years old when I found out my former had, been cheating. And I recognized again the understanding that I remember my belief system, where I checked into my belief systems and realized my belief system was, if I'm always a perfect mom and the perfect wife and I always look perfect and act perfect, my husband will always love me and never cheat on me. And that's the actual program and the belief system and the vibration, the frequency that was running. I was like, whoa. So here, all this time, and I recognized how I had looked for someone who was safe, because there was like a program that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't good enough. And so if I was up here and I was this beautiful person who was all these things, then this person would appreciate me and love me and never cheat on me, and this would be safe. Now, what was interesting is it doesn't matter how safe it looked. What I had been focused on was cheating. What I had been telling myself is that if I acted a certain way, was a certain way, if I showed up enough, if I showed up perfectly, I would always be loved and I would never be cheated on. So what was my mind seeing? What was my body feeling? The feeling of lack and not enough and being cheated on. And it all stemmed from deep insecurities of not even loving who I was, not loving my body, not thinking that I was enough. So it didn't matter how much I strived to be enough, these deep wounds that got to be healed and these deep beliefs and programs that were running was what I was vibrating. And so what I was vibrating and putting out was cheating. I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. And so as much as I would have never believed that the man that I married could have done that, that's exactly what I experienced. And now I say with the greatest amount of love, I see that as the greatest gift. I see that as our divine contract. I take full radical responsibility. I created that. He didn't do anything wrong. He was operating in his perfect divinity and where he was called. And so saying in the past, now when it first happened, it would definitely, I was not in that conscious of a place. And I remember the struggle coming up and the fight and all the things that came with the beautiful journey of divorce. And there's got to be a better word for that even yet. I remember thinking, yeah, well, you stuck your dick in someone else, motherfucker. And it's like, I saw it out of blame. I saw it out of, it was not my fault. It was not my issue. And yet it just rocked me to the core of feeling not enough. Now, my sister reminded me as we shared stories later through our healing journey. She's actually been through my program and like love what she teaches her babes, her kids, my beautiful niece and nephew that are twins, that are like my dear ones. They're my heart and soul. They're also like my own children. And she teaches them conscious languaging to themselves, and going through my program was teaching them how to see themselves and how to operate from that place of honoring themselves as the most. And so she and I were talking, somehow got onto the conversation of this. She told me that she's like, when she'd come over to my house when it first happened, I literally fell apart and I like didn't even know how to function. I didn't even know how to take care of my kids. And she said to me that one of the things that I had said was, I wanted to know if she was skinny or how pretty she was, or if she was skinny, and or if I was skinny or something to that effect. And I was like, what? I really said that? I was like, she's like, yeah, like that was like what you were worried about. I was like, wow, that was coming from the place of like, all I knew my value to be was to how I looked, and again, show up how everyone else wanted me to. So it was like, it would just rocked me to the core of feeling rejected and not enough, and was like, well, what does this person look like? And trying to compare myself. And it was such a beautiful, glorious journey that allowed me to take full responsibility to see how I had always had that fear and that program running. And so, of course, this beautiful divine sacred contract in front of me got to show up to share with me exactly what I was calling forth to learn, exactly what got to be healed and loved within myself to be able to be the being that I am today, where I get to be in full alignment with myself and love myself absolutely, and have come into complete peace and unconditional forgiveness and love. In fact, seeing him as a contract of me getting curious in the time period before is, what does unconditional forgiveness look like? What does it feel like? What is that? And him being the beautiful bestie of light that was like, I will come into your life and I will bring an experience that will give you that opportunity. And so he was operating in the highest vibration of light of what we chose to experience together. And I saw through our journey, as I remember at one point thinking, you know, and this feels like this has gone off to a few other things, but these were great realizations for me. I remember at one point thinking, I will never date a guy who is cheated. Because I thought, once a cheater, always a cheater. We hear that, and that obviously showed the programs. And as I moved through my own healing of seeing everything I was projecting as what I got to heal within, how I was still operating in that way. How was I cheating? How was I a cheater? How had I ever cheated in my life? How have I ever misled anything or been manipulative or anything? And could see how the patterns could exist within me. And understanding again that all of it was done out of love. All of it came from love. All of it was created by love. All of it was my choice and my decisions as my highest self and my guides that created every single interaction and creation for what I wanted to experience. How could I continue to create a story or blame or resistance around something when that would just create more suffering? And that's what it really comes down to. If you look at this, is like we can choose, like I could have chosen to go that same old program, be like, yep, another victimhood thing happening here, victim who survives, you know, let's get some validation that now I've got breast cancer and going to share this. That would have been the same old shit, the same old program operating. Instead, for me to come into alignment with a new experience, I got to create something different. I got to choose something different. I got to see the world differently. I got to operate in a different vibration and frequency. And so once I understood that, wow, like, even having those kind of thoughts was untrue, and it was just creating separation and creating resistance. And I'll remind you guys, I say this a lot because this is a truth nugget and just a principle of your greatest liberation, is that whatever you are in resistance to is blocking your manifestation. So if I was, again, in resistance to men who have cheated or anyone who has cheated, having some sort of story that they are not a good person, or because they had that one experience that meant they were this kind of a person, I would be blocking my own receiving of more love, more joy, more bliss, more harmony. And so I got called to heal that wound, and actually I could see the depths as I softened into my understanding and created a partnership and just a divine, beautiful relationship with my former, as I realized divorce could look any way. And it didn't have to be what the rest of society had created or these old stories. And so there was our healing journey we began to go down, where I would say, this is what I really want. I want a divine partnership with you. I want a relationship where you feel completely supported. I feel completely supported. I would love to support you in whatever you require. are, and in ways that I can help out with schedules, etc. And I would love the same. And I want our boys to feel like they have all of us, and that at any time we could all be together, we can all be at birthday parties, etc. I want to feel like we're besties and partners in raising our boys. And at first that was something that was a challenge for him to believe because of our experience. It was like, oh yeah, well, what about And that's just was showing the layers that I got to master my consciousness. I could see how many layers I would go before I would get triggered and in defense. And I got to learn and understand. This is when I got all the downloads and the imprinting of conscious communication, and healing all these things was like, oh, thank you for letting me know that that's what you're thinking or feeling. And this is what's really true, is like, what I really want is I want us to be partners and besties and make this easy. And we can have whatever relationship we want to create. And each time I consistently showed up in that vibration, and with that level of declaration and those patterns, behaviors matching, it became more and more real for him to see and receive, and it became what we created. And I saw, as we built a relationship, the depths of pain that my former experienced as just a part of his experience of being the one who cheated, and how painful it was for him to face family and face the neighborhood and face friends, is to go through that process, and how much shame and blame and guilt he carried. And then I got to experience dating someone who they had cheated. And I saw all of the divine light of their experience of having issues in their marriage, and all the things that came up that led to their experience of cheating. And it was just like, I could just see it all out of love. I could just see every single person having their own divine growth process and journey, and was like, how could one or the other be more right? So I had that story before that, like, oh, if you cheated, you're the bad one. And if you didn't cheat, then, oh, it wasn't you, you're the good one. Bullshit. It was just the perfect experience. And the cheater and the cheated both have their growth of what gets to be healed and what is available. And so it taught me so much to come to a place of just literally having no stories about any experience, about anything anyone is experiencing. And, I break this down in my Cleared for Takeoff coaching, is understanding how you get to obviously clear yourself to be able to take off when you release all these things that are holding you back, and all these ties to these traumas and these stories. Is that actually the truth is that we all have all of these characteristics and traits within us. If you blame and judge and think that murderers are bad, how have you been a murderer? I'm sure you've squashed a bug. And if you were locked in a basement and your life threatening, would you murder to save your life or to save your children? If you were raised in an environment where that was the norm, or sexual abuse was the norm, would you have the tendency to sexually abuse? We all have the traits within us, and we're all just choosing different life experiences for our greatest growth and healing. And so we're all on our own divine path. So who am I to say that the way that I am living is right? Because the way that you're living right now is what you chose and perfectly right for you. Now you can choose, just like I had the experience of operating from a victim who survived and having sickness and disease and all these things. I got to choose to completely shift and change that and learn from those things. As my greatest growth process is being human means to experience all of it and all emotions and all experiences. And I got to align to being one of the healthiest people anyone knew, and being on TV as the nutrition, fitness, mindset expert, and teaching people what I had learned and coming into wholeness with my body, then teaching people what I'd learned to come into wholeness with life and to become the powerful sovereign creator that I recognize that I am now, that I didn't understand back then. And I got to go through that journey to learn how to heal my body, how to heal my relationships, how to heal my experience with value and worthiness and money and abundance, and all the things are all just a part of my perfect path. Ah, what a perfect path. And so, my lovers, I'll share a few other pieces to this. Is I remember it was probably, I don't know even when, I just really don't operate in time anymore. And it was, I'd healed myself of breast cancer, and I don't know, it was sometime maybe in the next year or two. Enough time had gone by, I pretty much forgot that I ever experienced breast cancer, because I didn't talk about it. It was only my mom and my former had ever even known. It was actually after I'd been divorced, so a couple of years later. And I remember somehow one day I ended up talking to this lady, and she is that day looking for a speaker for the Breast Cancer Survivor Association. She ended up sharing with me, or we just ended up in this conversation. She ended up sharing with me how she was stressed, that she just lost one of the speakers for this breast cancer survival event, black tie affair that was happening. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot I had breast cancer. Like, I totally had forgotten because I just didn't think about it or focus on it, and how I learned to attune to my life that I'm living. And she was like, what? And we had a little conversation about my experience and how I'd overcome it and healed myself. And that what I teach and share with people to do is how to completely shift their lives to be experiencing something different. And she was like, I really wanted to find someone who could share with these women a positive message of how to experience it, so it doesn't come from a place of focusing on the victimhood part of it, but also how to experience it and how to heal yourself or become a survivor of it. And anyways, it aligned perfectly with my experience. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. And so it was going to be, actually, this was the first time I ever spoke. And so it's getting close, and I ended up inviting my sister. My sister had wanted to hang out or something, and that was the night that I was speaking. And so I invited her to this black tie affair. I said, you dress up, and it was like a dinner and all this stuff, and it was at this really beautiful place. And so I invited my sister to come, and I get on stage to speak. And as I share, yes, I had breast cancer. And I go into the story of my experience of having breast cancer and choosing to focus on health and healing and choosing the joy and all the things that I got to heal and just sharing. And I remember within just a few minutes of me talking, I saw my sister and her mouth was just dropped open. Like, she was just in absolute shock. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's right. She never knew. She never knew that I actually had breast cancer because I had sworn my mom to secrecy and had gone through my own healing and never focused on it or told anyone about it. And so it was also a laugh and a beautiful reflection of how much I got to commit to living in alignment with what I wanted to create. And that's what I really want you to tune into as I just wrap this up today. Is this just felt really strongly powerful to start to speak about today, and because it's been coming up and people asking me some questions that reflected around this, and that it comes down to micro alignment. It comes down to how willing are you to play that new role and identity. If you stay in the half and half, well, until this shows up over here, I'm still going to be this over here. Well, then you're still vibrating and responding with the same patterns, behaviors. How much you want something, how much can you choose to look for what you want, to speak what you want, to choose to cleanse and clear anything that comes up that is not in harmony within your system and your feelings and your emotional body, is all to be able to align to the greater truth of love that actually exists, of how you can see it out of love, how you can hear it out of love, what it's teaching you, why it's right, what was perfect about it, and all those things to then heal and transmute that energy to alchemize it into a higher vibration of light. Otherwise, you're still just vibrating the same shit and saying different words and thinking different things. And yet, if you don't now think about this as all the operating systems is what we're doing. We're bringing them all into alignment, that we're one clear, focused energy vibration. If I'm thinking something like a self-affirmation or, the surface self-empowerment, let me think this affirmation, but I'm feeling the opposite, like I described to you guys, feeling that I wasn't worthy, then it's not going to manifest. And if I am choosing to speak into the old stuff, but I want something different, it's not going to manifest. And if I'm choosing to look through, look at cheaters or da-da-da-da-da, I'm choosing to put focus and attention and have limiting stories and beliefs that are not going to serve my highest alignment in life. And so how can I receive beautiful, divine, gorgeous, conscious, amazing men and women in my life as divine besties and soul companions and beloveds and divine union? And the experience I'm having now, where every single person in my life, all my relationships are of the highest vibrational light. Everyone is so fucking divine. And there was a time in my life where I remember I didn't know if conscious men existed. And as I became more conscious, I remember even asking a coach that was a man and asking him, do conscious men really even want a conscious woman, or do they just want a trophy wife? Because all I'd seen was very powerful men who had trophy wives. And so I even was like, is this even something that exists? And seeing how many women I've coached and assisted and supported as well, and in transmuting that reality, and to them really like hardly even knowing that it exists, to seeing that it's everywhere. All that surrounds me is the most divine, amazing, beautiful individuals of love and light that are both men and women. And that comes from also harmonizing within yourself, the feminine and masculine, you becoming whole to receive, you get to be whole to receive wholeness. And you are always going to be receiving and seeing whatever you're experiencing within. And so this is one of the greatest turning points of my life. And so I'm so happy to share this with you. And hopefully from what you take from this is to get really clear on the micro alignment of your life, on the words that you're choosing to speak, the feelings you're choosing to have, and what you might be suppressing, and what is the tiniest thing that doesn't feel good. It's those micro things that actually lead you to the gold. It's like, ooh, interesting. I felt a little heavy when that person said that, or when I saw that person, and it's like, why? What was there? Oh, this thought was there. Like me revealing these beliefs I shared with you of these programs, they weren't just right on my field of awareness. I got to lean into why my body was hurting and why I would say certain things and what was there, which again, going through the 5 steps and being guided through was to like, wow, this is what was really there. Whoa, holy shit, that's what's been operating this whole time. Well, no wonder I received this as a perfect result and reflection of what I've been vibrating. So it's all there within us. All the medicine you seek and desire is within you, and you are the powerful creator that can design your cells and completely give your body a different health experience. If you're experiencing a lack of health or health issues, you can completely transmute all your relationships. You can completely experience a different reality where you're fully worthy of being supported by the universe in all abundance and prosperity and the luxury codes to be supported in living your passion and your purposes. It's all available. It's all within you as a sovereign creator that is a vibrational being. You are here to continue to discover all these parts of you and to be with all these parts of you, to transmute the lower vibrational frequencies to the highest vibrational frequencies of light, because that is the remembrance of who you truly are. So my friends, take this and do some contemplation on this and evaluate how else you get to micro align and come into a complete identity shift of being the highest vibration of light and being in full divinity of who you truly are to receive everything you desire. And I'm sending you so much love and so honored to be with you as you continue to move through your journey. Thank you, my friends, for joining me for another amazing conversation to create change. To allow that change to take place, please integrate the tools so that you can really receive the change into your life. And I invite you to join us for even more in the Best Life Tribe and continue on your path and your journey. And remember who you really are, a divine being that is already whole, already worthy, completely deserving, and fully capable to now claim and live the life you love.